But welcome everyone. I'm Jen Schwartz. Want to thank everyone for joining Renewed, the open network for specialized subscription membership and event professionals to connect, share best practices, solve challenges, and grow our business. If you haven't already, and it looks like most of you have, just put your name on next to your picture, and be sure to post in chat any questions you have as we go through. And I encourage you to kind of get involved. We don't have a set agenda for these roundtables. It's mostly what folks want to talk about. I typically reach out ahead of time to find out what topic areas people are interested in. And I did do that this week, but again, I think due to the weather and some other challenges folks are having, I didn't really get back any specific topic areas that people wanted to talk about. So I have a couple written down that maybe we could start with, but since there's a small group of us here, if anybody wants to jump in to start, do
I have
that.
a couple of things, kind of breaking news. I think you guys will probably be interested in. We just got an announcement that if any of you are going live soon, face to face soon, there's new restrictions in Vegas. So fortunately,
Wow.
The governor just announced, which is surprising because I did not. Rebecca, I don't know if you were on that thread from Shannon.
What are the restrictions, Elizabeth? Or what do you?
I'm pulling it up now. Rebecca, were you on that thread?
I was. I don't have it to hand. I'm looking for it also.
Yeah. We've got one in August, but we were just talking about that month to month is okay if you've got a small group, but not if you have a big group.
Right, exactly.
He specifically updated the meeting restrictions. So beginning March 15th, 2021, a host or venue may hold a conference, convention, trade show, professional seminar, or similar gathering for more than 250 individuals, but not more than 1,000.
Okay, so 250 up to 1,000. Okay.
Yep, and then plans for large gatherings may be submitted, although no events may resume until March 1st, and only if granted approval by applicable local health and state authorities.
Okay, that's somewhat encouraging, I guess, that they're upping the limit that they're allowing for folks.
And then should the state's infection and positivity rates continue to trend positively, the governor indicated he will remove state mandated restrictions and turn control over to county officials.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's actually really interesting. That actually kind of leads into one of the questions. I know we've talked about this before, but I feel like it changes almost every week. At least it does in our company. But how are you guys talking to your sponsors, right, for your August event or your September event, or how are you promising them sort of the deliverables, and is hybrid a piece of that? Are you saying like, listen, we're going to have the event either way, it's either going to be live or virtual, and if it's virtual you get these deliverables, if it's live you get these? Like, what are you guys hearing, and what are people demanding of you in terms of, like, if they're going to sign something, are they asking you to provide them with some sort of reassurance? Does anyone have feedback on that?
This is Rebecca. I can jump in.
Yeah.
We're fortunate that we're doing a lot of virtuals as well. So most of our in-person events, we can pair with a virtual for the sponsors. So we can give them something for both. So we know that the in-person may not be exactly as they're used to our events in the past. So we also have, it's almost like a 2-for-1. So we're sweetening the pot by giving them access to our virtuals as well. So
Yep.
the deals are combining both. So whatever it might be with booth or whatever at the in-person, they might also get a small speaking spot at a virtual, and then access to those contacts as well. So I think tying them together has been very helpful, because they know that we can't guarantee numbers that they had seen in the past. And at this point, they're just itching to get in front of the right people, and they know we can provide the right people. So they're willing to work with us in terms of getting to them and getting their message out, whether it's in person or virtual.
So Rebecca, that's interesting. How are you talking to them about virtual, are you guys planning that like you're going to have a virtual event that is sort of live streaming or on demand at the same time frame? Or are you talking about, hey, if you come to our August event, then you can maybe have a speaker at our March webinar? Like what are you considering virtual in this?
So we're doing a couple of different things. So for some of them, if we have an in-person event in the fall, we might be doing a virtual event in the spring.
Got it.
So then we package that together. And then for others that are in the fall, we generally are doing a virtual as a component. It won't be happening at the same time, but it'll be happening anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks afterwards. And that gives us options for people who can't travel, don't want to travel, but still can get access to that education. And so anybody who attends the fall in person that has a tied virtual will get the virtual for free. So it's a nice bonus for them for attending in person. And then for those who didn't want to come to the in-person, who can't come, they still have this other option. And it's not the same content. We might have some overlap because we do a lot of regulatory information. So there's the big stuff that people will need. So that will have some overlap, but mostly the two events will be separate. We have one big event that generally has 6 tracks in person. So for 2021, we've cut that down to 4 in person and 2 virtual. So people who are attending in person will actually get more sessions than they usually would because they couldn't physically go to all those sessions. So they'll get those 2 bonus sessions, 2 bonus tracks, which is nice. And then the virtual tracks will be sort of our biggest topics, so that's more broad audience to make sure that they get a nice variety of things.
Did you say that what the price point was? I'm sorry, I'm sure you did. I just missed that. How they price differently? I
didn't actually. So our in-person conferences range anywhere from sort of around, if you have various memberships and things, you can get them for as low as about just under $900, anywhere up to about $1,400, $1,500 for some of our events. And then our virtual are really cheap at $399.
Okay, that's similar to what we're offering too. Our in-person are usually, actually in some cases, a little bit more, anywhere from $1,400 to $2,000, depending on who it is. Obviously, end users pay less. But our virtuals, we've actually done, we start at we do it the opposite. We start at the lower price, like say $250, and then we have a couple of price breaks to try to drive those virtual registrations.
Mm-hmm.
So the closer to the event, it's $399. So that helps us, have some good days where, we get a lot of orders in one day.
Right.
Are there CE credits for every one of these online?
Yes.
Because that's pivotal, right? So like, I would think for shows that don't provide that, or for publishers, newsletters that don't actually offer that, they would have to have a different pricing structure. It's the CE credits that strike me as the reason why that $395 price point would be something you could budget for, right? So it becomes much more explainable. It doesn't become a nice to have, it becomes a, we really must have this. And it's a much easier, provides the attendee a much easier way to defend the expense,
exactly.
even in this post-COVID world, well, COVID world.
Exactly. And many of our events are healthcare related. And
I'll stop now.
Yeah, CEUs are very important for our customers, and a big impetus for them to purchase. And we've heard from them that they have been struggling with getting the CEUs that they need to, recertify. So those CEUs are huge.
Excuse me, Jennifer Brown just mentioned in the chat, for CLE, most states have relaxed their rules, type of credit you can earn. So that's interesting. So that's almost like what they're doing, right? And I live in Virginia, and you have to get your car inspected every year. But this year they've said, oh, you don't have to do it as quickly, and we're going to penalize you. So it sounds like other folks are doing the same thing during the pandemic. Do you want to expand on that, Jennifer? What you've heard?
Okay, the CLE is so important to us. We're on all the state CLE boards mailing lists. And so they send us, their updated COVID rules. And some states, you had to have certain things happen during an online event for it to count as live credit instead of self-study. For example, Georgia, all online was self-study. Now it's not currently. Other states, it's just they've relaxed the rules so that just about you can get live participatory credit, whereas it used to be considered self-study credit, which has limits on it.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that's a big deal. That's helped a lot.
Yeah. We're fortunate with healthcare that they don't discriminate generally between in-person or virtual education, but we do typically have a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through to ensure that the education is up to their standards, such as having nurse planners, for example, certifying that it is correct and valid and all sorts of things like that. But other than that, whether it's in person or virtual, doesn't matter.
Interesting. Has anyone had any success with figuring out kind of the pricing model of the two together? So obviously, Rebecca, you mentioned for your in-person, you get the virtual for free. I don't know if other folks are doing something similar, or are people offering like season passes or group memberships, or hey, if you buy an in-person and then for whatever reason you have to go virtual, like what are you doing, or what are you thinking about how you would transfer that registration? Would you then allow a couple people from that same company to come to the virtual because obviously they've paid a higher price? Or has anybody dealt with that yet, or figured out sort of the plan? Because those are things we're thinking, right? Like how do we make people whole to the best of our ability without refunding registrations?
And I apologize, I missed the beginning of this question, so if I'm answering the wrong thing, let me know. But one of the things that we've done is, if transferring from an in-person to a live virtual, is then fulfill the rest of that money in product. So we have a lot of people who are members of various things. So they might be delighted to receive an upgrade membership level or things like that. But we've been trying, when moving them to a virtual, to fulfill the rest in other products. And we have had a lot of people who attend our events every year and they're like, no, just move my registration to the next year. But generally we're able to get a mix of products to them.
Great, that sounds good. Any other questions here? As I mentioned at the beginning, some of you weren't on right when we started, but I didn't really get a lot of topic requests for this month, so I will leave it to this lovely group of 11 or 12 if there's anything pressing you guys want to ask about. Yeah, David?
Just on the pricing question, again, we don't do the big events that a lot of you on we're still all virtual, but we're starting to go to sort of shorter potential of live events or virtual, so hybrid. But we're at a lower price point, I'd say, more say $600, $700 price point, and also we're heavily discounting to our what we call our passport customers, the people that subscribe to all of our webinars and training materials. So those people are getting a real, like a 60% price break, maybe. Is that maybe too aggressive? And we're in a CP environment too, like, not medical, not legal, but, so that's a factor. So our attendance has been good, but, definitely drop the price down a little bit. Or other people adding that into the mix, like you said, Jen?
Yeah, definitely the price, the decrease in the price has done a couple things. One, it's opened it up for more people that we never had before. And we're seeing on our virtual events, in some cases, 30-40% of the folks are brand new. Like we didn't have them anywhere, right? So that's super exciting that like down the road when we're live again, we'll be able to reach out to this new crew.
Do you think that's the pricing? Is it,
I'm
is
sorry,
it
what?
the lower?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's pricing and I think it's not travel, right? Because in some cases, people have to get permission to travel. They have to get permission to spend over a certain amount of money. It just becomes a lot easier to look at a $400 price point and say, gosh, for 3 days of, 3 half days of content, 12 hours of content, that's a good deal for me. And I can still network, I can still meet people and consume the content. So for us, it's worked out well. But yeah, I do feel like a lot of it is that you're giving them the option to not travel and to be safe, but still interact with your community. So I think that's part of it. Jennifer, you just put in the chat about you increase the cost for multiple attendees from the same location. So do you want to talk a little about that? Because that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was surprised it went over. We charge $297 full price. That includes 1 registrant and 1 CLE credit. In the past, you could have like 10 people in a conference room, and it was still $297, but then it was like $97 or something for processing CLE credits. But if 8 of the people in the room wanted to report their own credits, they didn't pay anything to
Right.
us. Now, since most people in most law firms are working remotely, we changed it. Each individual has to register for themselves, and there's no group price anymore. So I thought we did deal with like our long-term customers who've spent a lot of money with us. We gave them a special deal.
Or some
But
credits.
for everybody else, you pay the full $297 and you get your credits reported. Now we do unlimited states. We don't say we'll only report 1 state, for
Right.
example.
Now, that's a really good point. And I like the way that you're able to differentiate it, right? Because in the past, you could offer, hey, whoever wants to come to this webinar, you pay 1 price and 10 of you can sit in the boardroom, but that doesn't work anymore. Now you're dealing with 10 different people in 10 different locations. So it would make sense that you could justify that. So
Right.
that's
And
really
we also switched over to all video webinars. So there's a perceived additional value there too.
yeah, and cost, right? From going from
Not really.
and not as much. Okay, that's good.
Not really. It's the same. We're with Beacon Live,
Mhm.
and they don't charge us any more for our video webinars versus audio and slides.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, it's great because we had to have a tech run, with every single event.
Mhm.
And that's more of their time, but they don't charge us for that either.
Yeah.
And another one of our webinar vendors, Blue Sky, it was going to be quite a large increase to go to video. So we do audio only we like to have 2 vendors. So we do audio only with Blue Sky for our tax prep and accounting people. And our lawyers are all on the video
On the
webinars.
video, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, this is Shannon Sterla, and I found the exact same experience with Beacon Live. They're super flexible with us with whichever format we want to move forward with, and they're all about respecting the client relationship and how long we've been a customer of theirs, and really not kind of pushing us in any way, especially through the transition of what we needed to do. And mind you, we haven't done a lot virtual, but we still keep all our webinar business. But we used to be also a customer of Blue Sky because we had that same philosophy of having 2 vendors.
Mhm.
So it's really kind of familiar to me. But we moved away because we just felt like we could put all the eggs in Beacon Live, because even though we had some hiccups early on,
Right.
they've really shown through strong and real professional with their services and their
Oh,
That's
I
actually
ability to
great
act
to
quickly.
hear.
love Beacon
Yeah.
Live, but it's really expensive because of their pricing model. And with Blue Sky, we have a flat rate per
Mhm.
event. So with our tax prep events, we might have 300 or 400 people, and on Beacon that would cost a fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you make a good point. I mean, we noticed this. We use a few different vendors for virtual events, and we have a separate vendor for our webinars and things. But the year-over-year increase was astronomical in some cases. With, you know, we tried to get on quickly last year because we had to pivot to virtual, and we got these great deals. But now I think all these folks are realizing, hey, you know, virtual could stay for longer, and we really saw some price increases, pretty significant ones that we had to really negotiate. I don't know if the rest of you have had issues. Sounds like maybe Beacon didn't do that, which is great, but I know we definitely have had that with some of our vendors, which is, you know, is what it is, I guess.
Well, their demand definitely spiked, you know, so I think they've
Yeah.
had the ability to do so, but.
To do that, yeah.
Did other people have to renegotiate with? We use Big Mark, or they've been stable, you know, nothing special. I'm not, you know, but generally done a good job. The only battle we had with them is they keep inserting their branding next to ours. So it's, you know, it's like the BVR Big Marker webinar, and I'm like, get your branding on there. It's not your program, but so we've had that issue, but no price stuff.
That's good. What about who's actually planning a live event this year? I know Rebecca, Elizabeth, Shannon, you guys are. Who else is?
Hi, this is Jim Alpus. We have actually, as I said before, we have networking events. And I was going to ask that, you know, to the group, who has actual live events scheduled, because we have 3 of them back to back in late April to mid-May. And again, ours are, you know, they're a community of healthcare executives that we've had for several years. These are networking events. There's 100% sponsor revenue. There's no advantage or business reason why we would blend hybrid. You know, we have other virtual thought leadership, lead gen type events. In fact, we got 2 or 3 a week, to be honest with you. So that there's no, you know, these are doing live events because we need to get back to doing live events, and our sponsors want live events. You know, it's not as if there's an alternative.
Like how many people per networking event, roughly?
Good question. Again, these are C-level healthcare executives, so it's 25 to 30 invited executives. And, you know, we've got some others spaced out in August through the end of the year, which, you know, we feel a little safer about. But, you know, so far we have 25 CFOs signed up for our CFO event.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, so you're actually getting the attendees to sign up for it.
We do. And of course, these are networking events where we're picking up their, you know, there's no fees to them.
Yeah, right.
You know, our sponsors are basically in the position of looking for live event sponsorship. I mean, they have virtual options with us, you know, as far as the eye can see. But and in many cases, we've got a package that we've sold them that covers all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just curious, is anybody else crazy enough to be starting up live events here in the next few weeks and months? And if so, how's it going?
So we were crazy enough to have an April event, but that has now moved to June. But I will say it's much more than 25 people, right? So like our events typically are in the hundreds, not thousands, but in the hundreds. So anywhere from 200 to 500, right? So we have seen in a lot of our events, the sponsors are ready and willing. It's the attendees that are not interested in hitting the go button. So we have a few. I think we only have 1 scheduled for April. Right now we have 2 or 3 scheduled for June, and we're in the process of looking at all 3 of those to decide, should we just, you know, move them to later in the year. But my organization, we have a ton of them stacked up from like August through like the end of the year.
I'm curious if the rest of you are facing the same dilemma we do, which is we do have some fall events, but we feel like pushing anything back to the fall now, not only are we competing with ourselves in some cases, but there's just so many events in our industry, big conferences to small networking events that have backloaded the second half of the year, that we feel it's riskier to do that than to maybe just try to forge ahead with something in this spring and summer.
Yeah. Yeah, you end up, like you said, you end up competing with yourself. Are you changing the structure as you guys go back, Jen, Jim, other people,
Yeah.
or?
We have discussed every week. We discuss the latest, safety protocols. We have very corporate, and Shannon could talk about it. We have our own corporate safety protocols that we're going to follow. We also have some variability in terms of the local safety protocols that we're going to follow. But, there are some things like with the typical networking receptions that we have to tweak. But, Shannon, you can talk some more about this, but there are some things we got to change, but it's still hopefully got the same feel, we hope.
Yeah, we do want to be able to include receptions, but we just don't know how people are going to feel about mingling, and really just kind of hanging out and feeling awkward if they don't have a structure to kind of follow. So instead, what we're doing is it's called dinner on a flow. So instead of a 1 hour cocktail reception followed by, a meal, whether it be buffet or plated, and then a presentation, we're going to have the bar and the buffets, attendant served, of course, ready to go right out of the start. So if people want to grab, drink, and stand, they can. We'll have some high cocktail tables around. But, they may just want to grab their dinner and go to, sit down. And, depending on where we are and what state, and that's a question that I do want to follow up with to the group. But it's a matter of how many people can sit at a table. Is it 4 per banquet round and whatnot? But it gives that person the ability to come in, still feel like they're networking, but they can be seated, they can be social distance, and they can feel comfortable. So that's going to be a really important part for us.
Interesting.
Yeah, and what I wanted to pose to the group, and Jennifer, I'd love to know where your event was scheduled to be in April that you've moved to June.
Yeah.
If anybody has any suggestions on how they're following state guidelines, because every state is so different, and some states have the COVID liability shield in place, other states do not. So I'm trying to find resources that really can give me pointed direction on how to follow all of this information.
All of that. Yeah. Luckily, I have a wonderful group of ops people that do that for us. So I can get you in touch with one of them. But yeah, so our event in April was going to be in Atlanta. And quite honestly, Atlanta is open for business right now for all intents and purposes, but we listen to our attendees and our sponsors, and they're not comfortable, we won't do it. The other thing that I'm holding on to hope for is, Dr. Fauci has said on numerous occasions, he expects most people that want to be able to have the vaccine to have had it by the end of June, early July. So that's another reason why we have most of our things happening in the fall, so that people would hopefully feel more comfortable if they're vaccinated. And we're hearing that from some sponsors too, like, hey, will you push back to October? And, with the understanding that hopefully we'll be able to be in person. But we, absolutely feel that people should have a choice. In every event we have this year, we've been very clear, every single one has a virtual component. It doesn't necessarily happen the same week, but if you choose not to be there, we completely understand and appreciate that. And even sponsors, if they don't want to have, if they can't travel, or they don't want to be there, or they're not comfortable, then we have lots of virtual options we can offer them. So, but yeah, you're right. They're all different. Every state and city is different. It's really difficult.
It is.
To navigate that.
Yeah. Well, whatever I come across, I will happily put into the Slack channel and share it, because
great.
If somebody does all this research, it's a matter of getting it out so that way we all can find it too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a good point.
How are you finding where you are going hybrid? Are you finding, in the perfect world, in my mind, the hotels would be chastised for what I consider their generally hostile behavior towards all of us in the past. And now they would be thoughtful and considerate and supportive of all our efforts to create great content. I suspect that's not really happening. Have any of you guys seen any additional flexibility from the hospitality industry?
Yeah, and it really depends on the state, because we're seeing in some states they're like, we will do no minimums, you come, no
Wow.
minimums on food, no minimums on, like, just come, like, and then other ones are very much more strict. So really, yeah, it kind of depends, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice to hear. Still, at least some of the industry. Interesting. Are other people seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I would say Jennifer's spot on, is that in conversations you have some really wonderful people you work with, and then others are just like, I got to follow corporate structure and I answer up to
Yeah.
somebody else. And, you know, they give you that conversation. But yeah, I think it's just all a conversation, and it'll be interesting because the hotel industry needs events back too. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
hope to see it improve.
Hmm.
And
About,
we,
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jennifer. Yeah, I was just going to say that, you know, for Simplify Compliance, you know, for our paid conferences that are, you know, kind of the open registration to, you know, more the national audience, we're offering a virtual component, but to your point, it happens later. It happens after the live event, and those attending the live event will get complimentary access to the virtual as it's the supplemental content. So we want to encourage those that are, you know, coming to the live event that they're going to get, you know, something special on the end, but it is also for sale, you know, separately from the live event. So we're not doing anything truly hybrid by that definition of streaming on site to a virtual audience, as we're still finding that's just way too expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely agree. Why don't we transition to content? I know we've talked in the past a little bit about speakers. Anyone have some, you know, kind of, I don't know, cool things they've been able to do virtually, either with speakers or you know, are you still paying your speakers to come onto your virtual event, or are you finding that people are a little more flexible? We obviously don't pay for most of ours, but occasionally if we want like a really good keynote, we'll have to pony up for that. So I was just curious what other people are finding with how you're getting your speakers. Are you getting new and different ones than you've had before? Is it easier to secure them because it's a virtual? Or is it the same types of folks?
This is Rebecca. We're definitely finding virtual is easier to recruit for, but we have a variety of events, some where we don't pay speakers at all and some where we do. And I had hoped that there would be a little more flexibility with the speakers at the events where they typically command payment, but they're still wanting payment, and not as flexible as I would have thought, to be honest. So, you know, we definitely have to keep the budget in mind, very much. But for a lot of events, we are finding that people are willing. They're like, well, you know, I'm happy to come to your in-person, and if you're doing virtual as well, I can do the same presentation. So they're often coming to us and saying, I can be flexible. If you end up pivoting to virtual, I'll still do it. Things like that.
Interesting. Anyone else? I love that. Lawyers are awesome. They'll speak, right? Jennifer.
Yeah.
What about any cool networking ideas people have? I mean, I can, you know, I'm so tired of video calls. We have a virtual book club that I do once a month, and even that sometimes I'm like, oh my God, video all day, and then I have to get back online for personal and do more video. But is anyone finding anything they've done so far they'd like to share, with something that really resonated with your attendees or exhibitors or sponsors for events you've done so far that you want to share that's worked? Gamification or anything?
Again, we're smaller, you know, smaller events, but the a little more tactical small group research like that's given us some opportunities. So inserting that kind of content's worked well for us. And the one other thing is,
David, what do you mean by that? Like when they come into like the room to discuss something, they're given like a topic or something, and that's
we're around a webinar where you're sort of surveying literally 10 to 12 people around a specific topic that's somewhat you know, somewhat vendor related perhaps, you know, so you're creating, the survey is actually the networking. So
Oh, very
those
cool.
individuals are talking as part of the research. You know, so up to including one-on-one interviews as a way to create networking when it's not happening at the live events. And in our market, we've got, you know, the big CPE provider is the AICPA, which, no comments, but the quality of their programming often tends to be kind of lowbrow, you know, so they've been doing more surveys, but some of them have just plain been embarrassing. Like the questions are so below the intellectual level of their members, you know, like that it's, you know, you got to be careful that you've got a very specific topic that's rich from a content point of view. And then you can get some kind of offline discussions going around a research project, and then also have something you can sell at the end of it. So that's one thing that's worked for us with very small.
That's really
groups.
cool. I love that idea. Because you're engaging the people for something that, you know, you'll get intel on, but also they get to connect with each other, and there's a purpose for them being in the room. I like that.
Yeah, it gives you an excuse to talk to your best friends, sort of, you know.
And so then do you let the sponsor just in there kind of like a fly on the wall, or are they part of the actual like sort
Well,
of?
I wish we had more sponsors. That's where nobody wants to sell to our part of the market. So it's a small
Yeah.
group, but no, where you can include them.
Mhm.
In fact, in some cases, you let them do the interviews if you want, you know, as long as you have a good question. So it's sort of a chance to interact between your editorial staff and sponsors and your customers. They can all work together to do it if that meets your business goals.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one area we don't always talk about in this roundtable, because I know we actually have a separate marketing roundtable, but I'm curious what folks are doing this year to just sort of drive, I don't know, programmatic, finding new names, new lists. Like what are you guys finding that's resonating? I'll mention one thing. Beth and I work together, but we have a colleague who has been trying out something called Zimplify with a Z. And they are an organization that will help find you new names of folks that have gone to your competitors' websites and consumed their information. They can help find who those people are and then redirect them back to your information. So, so we're doing a pilot program right now with them for 3 months. But that's just kind of one new company we've come across, but I don't know if others are using a company they would recommend, or just ways that you're trying to drive list. Oh, actually, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, that's, I've never heard of them, and that sounds absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. I think yeah, there we go. Yeah, Zimplify with a Z, so. So yeah, any feedback on folks that are, you know, marketing lists? Any new info here on the event side? Any new tactics you've tried? Programmatic?
We've added some back to basics kind of programming, which usually is not where we do our programming. We're usually trying to aim for the thought leadership stuff. But the lead gen, we've definitely had more success with doing back to basics. We've got a 3-part, 2-hour each part webinar that's starting today on like integrated theory to business valuation, which is sort of like intro level. And we've got all of our Passport subscribers, but I think we've got like 40 or 50 new people on that one, which is huge for us. You know, we're often dealing with 5 new names, 7 new names, that kind of stuff. So
Right.
so that you know, maybe a little different level programming can generate a little more lead gen. But anyway.
Is anyone doing what is it? I don't know what they call themselves now. AdRoll used to be AdWords.
Oh yeah,
AdRoll or Google Ads or anything that's.
we're not. Are you?
We do.
Are you?
We use Google Ads and Google Words, and we use LinkedIn ads.
Yeah, how is that working? Because we have tried a gazillion ways to figure out LinkedIn, and that is one of the hardest ones to.
For us, it's actually like we always say, how do you know if you monetize, right? Like we can, of course, we have a special tracking code on our LinkedIn ads. And so we have actually gotten brand new customers and annual pass holders have purchased through our LinkedIn. It's not that many, but to even see any and to be able to link it directly to that is kind of exciting. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Beth, I don't know what some of the other things you're using are. I don't think you've started Zimplify yet, right?
Just going to be starting Zimplify. And I mean, we just use programmatic Feather as we get closer to the event. So I haven't started that up yet because my events are happening in August and September. But yeah, that Zimplify and
yeah, that's a good point. Feather, I know, is another one, and they tend to mention that if you're gonna try to get folks, the closer to the event that you start is better, I think is what they've suggested, right, Beth? Usually 2 or 3 months out, maybe something in that range.
Yeah, so we have them do the abandoned cart type of targeting and also just getting it out there closer to the event. But yeah, usually they say to start, I think like 6-8 weeks before the event and then to roll it up then.
Yeah, roll it through. Right. Any other topics, burning questions people have before March that you want answered for your events?
I have a question. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just a very general comment. Nothing before March, but as these meetings progress monthly, I'm really interested in hearing how others are approaching the safety protocols, the safety messaging to attendees prior to live events, because everything I read is just like hammer it home. So that way, when you get on site, somebody can, they can't look at you and say, I didn't know about this.
Right.
Because that is another element of the liability factor that I'm looking at.
Yeah, we actually have Shannon, if you go to accessintel.com and just, you can find most of our events that way. Otherwise I'd have to give you 50 different event URLs, but there are, we have safety pages already put up for a lot of our large events that our ops team put together. Some of them are Q&A and some of them are simply just, here's the safety and here's what we're doing. But to your point, obviously, as we get closer and actually have them, there'll be a lot more questions and we'll hopefully have a lot more answers from our hotels. The problem is right now, I've got a situation in one of my cities where the hotel is saying, yes, we're open, and the convention center is saying, yeah, no, we're not open. So for the same amount of people, right? So it's like, you can't even get the city to agree, like who's allowed to be there, who's not. So it's definitely challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And we too, just over the past 2 weeks, posted our COVID safety, which I'll
check that too. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So that's good to know. And yeah, Las Vegas just released that they're now up to 35% capacity. And then March 15th, hopefully they'll be up to hosting meetings over 250, but less than 1,000. So still making some, groups sweat it out, to see if those limits will be restricted. Yeah, lifted. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, did you have something to say? Oh, you're on mute. Yep.
This is like totally unrelated. Okay. But I mean, it's relevant to all of us. So, so we've got a sort of a cookie disclosure at the bottom of our homepage, and you can link to our cookie policy, but we don't have the opt-in, opt-out. And from my research, that's not required right now by any of the laws. disclosure is required, and the GDPR's privacy director is not law yet. Directive is not law yet, although they're working on that. So what are people doing? Are y'all doing anything with the cookie disclosure, opt in, opt out on your websites? I just had a customer yesterday just go nuts because he claimed Beacon didn't have it when he logged in. They do, but no issues with that.
We've assumed that GDPR is already in play, so we kind of just made all of our websites compliant. And really part of that was even more than the California law, the whole, European law. So we have every single site or registration form we have is compliant for that. Beyond that, we have a privacy on every single page. Now, where it differs by our brands, in some cases, we ask people to opt out that says, check this box if you don't want to receive third-party emails from us or, sponsor emails. And in other times, we opt them in and
yeah, we've got that covered too.
Yeah.
It was really just the cookie thing.
Yeah, no, that's a
because
good
it seems
question.
like every website I've been to lately, like the cookie policy comes floating
does.
up
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
opt in, opt out. And I've wondered why people like were suddenly being more, especially law firms. Of course, they have an international presence. So
Anyone else on the consent for the cookies? I know exactly what you're talking about because I see it too when I go across different media sites, even have to hit okay and then it.
yeah, and some don't do anything but just
Yeah.
have the disclosure. No? Okay. Well, thanks for nothing.
That's a
We'll
very
see.
good
I'll see if I
question.
can find an answer to that. I'm going to ask my CIO that. He might know what the
Yeah,
cookie
we're
is.
asking
I
the
mean-
same question. We just don't have an answer. And I'm not as directly involved in that, but we're, having conversations about, how do we get relevant data from our site traffic? It's not so much the cookie notification. It's, everybody's got cookie blockers and now,
Yeah.
and site traffic to us is one indicator, but the gold standard is really knowing, who's your user, who's your listener, who's your reader, what are they watching, what are they reading, and it's a minefield, and I'd love to hear more about the experience, but we're trying to work through those same questions. I mean, you're in the legal field, we're in healthcare, but the same sets of regulations and everything apply to us.
Higher.
Our sponsors are, they're not interested in a portion of our audience that's not the decision maker. And so
Right.
we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that we're reaching those decision makers, but also in a way, obviously our name of the company is Simplify Compliance. So we're going to be compliant with everything. And it's a minefield and we're having those discussions, and I wish I had a better answer.
No, you make really good point. Like I said, I'm going to actually look into that. Maybe we'll try to have an answer for our next call on that, or at least I can put something in the Slack channel. But that's very, very good point. Yeah, interesting. I'm not sure.
And
Anyone else
a
have-
lot of states have passed new privacy laws. Not that many, actually. A lot of states were in the process before COVID. And once COVID hit, that's just low priority.
Yeah,
So
yeah, right. Anyone else have insights from their organization? All right, well, I think I'll give everyone 9 minutes back to your life for your work day. If there's nothing else, thank you everyone for being here.